And in fact, I shake my head that we're even having this discussion.
Tonight on Politics Now, why Metro Police are firing back at proposed criminal justice reforms in the legislature.
And Governor Steve Sisolak's budget includes extending the modified business tax. I look at whether the legislature will need 2/3 to do it.
No pressure, but definitely a responsibility.
Women from the nation's first female majority state legislature tell us how they plan to affect change in our state.
From 8 News Now, this is Politics Now with Steve Sebelius and Patrick Walker.
The Nevada state legislature is celebrating a milestone. Women make up just more than 50% of the members, making it the first female majority state legislature in U.S. history. Thanks for joining us. I'm Steve Sebelius.
And I'm Patrick Walker. That new majority is looking to find some common ground and transcend party lines.
The start of a new legislative session is a moment for reflection.
For the first time, the 2019 legislature met for Governor Steve Sisolak's State of the State speech. The fact that for the first time there is a woman majority was not lost on him.
Tonight we are joined by the newly elected and appointed women who took a leap this past year and together made history. Would the women please stand? Let's give them another round of applause.
Assistant Majority Leader Danielle Monroe Moreno, the first African-American woman to serve in an assembly leadership role, says each and every one of the 32 female legislators are ready to be trailblazers.
And it's important to have us at the table because we bring a different dynamic to the conversation to move our state forward. There's a cliche saying that when women do better, families do better. When families do better, our state does better.
I'm just very honored and humbled to be here, to be able to sit in that chamber. It's awe-inspiring and almost surreal.
Politically, freshman Assemblywoman Melissa Hardy may be in the minority, but she says there is common ground among the female majority on issues like education.
Education is the key to opening doors for opportunities for our kids, for their futures. And so I think that as women, we can provide good conversations and good experience in that area.
It's a duty these lawmakers take seriously, not only for the next 120 days in the legislature, but also in the months and years to come.
No pressure, but definitely a responsibility. We have a responsibility not only to the citizens of Nevada, but to the people of our country. We are the
Well, an interim legislative commission spent a lot of time reviewing crime and punishment with an eye towards sending fewer people to prison and saving the state money, but some of these recommendations are drawing criticism from law enforcement.
The commission found Nevada incarcerates more people than the national average and that prison terms are getting longer. Last year, for example, 2/3 of people sentenced to prison didn't commit a violent offense, and some had no prior convictions at all. The commission recommended lessening the penalties for certain crimes, including drug possession and auto burglaries, and increasing resources for diversion programs such as drug treatment. Assemblyman Steve Yeager chaired that commission.
Everyone agrees that we need to do something. The cost of doing nothing is unacceptable to the state. And I think we have a general agreement on where we're trying to go. We have some disagreement on how exactly we get there and what the best way to get there is. But by and large, everyone on the commission believed in most of the recommendations, and the final vote was 11-4. So that was 11 votes for everything that was in the report.
If the state implements the recommendations the commission said in its report, it could cut the growth in prison populations by nearly 90% and save the state as much as $640 million. Now, one of those 4 dissenting votes that Chairman Yeager referred to belongs to Chuck Calloway. He's the Director of Intergovernmental Services for the Metro Police Department. Calloway said the recommendations are misguided, and lowering felony crimes to misdemeanors removes a tool that police and courts can use to force offenders to reform.
I fully understand that we do need to look at ways to reduce prison population. We do need to look at ways for the state to save money. That's very important. But public safety is also important, and the answer is not to decriminalize to save money. The answer is to look at ways to change behavior, criminal behavior, and reduce crime in general. And so conceptually, that's where I had a concern with some of the philosophy behind just reducing crimes in order to save money.
Perhaps ironically, changing behavior is what Yeager says his commission's recommendations will do by diverting money spent on prison time to drug treatment programs for first and second time offenders in justice and municipal courts, and avoiding spending resources on nonviolent crimes such as auto burglaries. In fact, the report even recommends slightly reducing the penalties for ex-felons found in possession of firearms, something police call, frankly, unbelievable.
You know, the philosophy behind this is philosophy behind a lot of these recommendations is let's treat the conduct accordingly. When we're talking about an ex-felon in possession, that's what we're talking about, someone who's in possession of a firearm, not somebody who is then committing a crime, because of course if they commit a crime, then you're going to see additional charges that are added on.
But even possession is a crime when you're a felon.
It is a crime, of course, but you don't have that impact on a victim, the devastation that you might have if someone, you know, uses a firearm for a robbery or an assault or something like that.
It's very concerning, and in fact, I shake my head that we're even having this discussion on the Advisory Commission in a time where we have violence being committed by people with firearms that shouldn't have a firearm, and we're talking about reducing the penalties for a prohibited person possessing a firearm. I just shake my head at that. I can't even fathom that we're having that conversation.
All right, so let's break it down a little bit. Steve, there are a lot more recommendations than just what we heard about in this report, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's a total of 25 recommendations. Others are for things like training for first responders, streamlining parole, and investing in community supervision and transitional housing. We have the link, by the way, to that full report on our website at lasvegasnow.com.
Well, maybe unexpectedly, if you were just kind of passively listening to what the governor said, another issue coming up this session will actually be taxes. Governor Steve Sisolak promised no new taxes, but the governor's budget does count on extending a tax that would otherwise have been dropped to a lower level.
Yeah, the question is, what constitutes a tax increase? If a tax that's supposed to expire or come down is extended at its current level, nobody's going to pay any more money. They'll just keep paying at the same rate they're paying now. But others argue if they don't get an anticipated tax break, they're paying more than they otherwise would have, so that means it is an increase. It's a semantic debate that's been going on since the governor delivered his speech.
I don't know how we're going to pay for them if we're not going to raise any taxes. So that tells me probably that the MBT tax will get extended instead of sunsetting. And to me, that is a new tax. You know, when my carton of milk expires, I have to buy a new carton of milk.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's why this budget that you're being presented with is without any new taxes.
So who's right? The answer starts back in 2015 when lawmakers passed the commerce tax on business revenue. But they said that if the commerce tax, the payroll tax, and the tax on insurance premiums combined reached a certain amount, then the payroll tax would be reduced. Well, Nevada's hit that amount, but Sisolak wants to keep the payroll tax at the exact same level it is right now. So the question is, would that need a two-thirds vote in the legislature or not? Under the state constitution, any bill that creates, generates, or increases public revenue requires a two-thirds vote. So far, Nevada courts haven't ruled on the question of whether extending a tax that was set to expire needs two-thirds. And while lawyers in the Legislative Counsel Bureau haven't issued a formal opinion on the question, back in 2015, they said that a bill that extended several expiring taxes did need a two-thirds supermajority, and the legislature did get those votes.
Well, coming up, a startling diagnosis.
I was diagnosed with stage 2A breast cancer in my right breast.
What Las Vegas Mayor Carolyn Goodman says about her breast cancer treatment.
services, and more. Only at Planet Nissan.
Welcome back to Politics Now.
Las Vegas Mayor Carolyn Goodman announced this week that she has stage 2 breast cancer.
Midday, January 16th, I was diagnosed with stage 2A breast cancer in my right breast. I've been advised by my incredible team at Comprehensive Cancer Centers that it is completely contained, manageable, and can be successfully treated.
Goodman went on to say she is still full of energy as a pack of wolves, in fact. The mayor made that announcement about her diagnosis before filing to run for what would be her third and final term in that office if elected. Goodman was first elected in 2011 after her husband Oscar Goodman termed out. Filing for the 2019 municipal elections started this week. So far, nobody has announced that they plan to run against Goodman for mayor.
And of course, all of us at 8 News Now want to wish the mayor a very speedy recovery.
Well, Henderson Mayor Deborah March gave her yearly address on the state of the city, much of her speech focusing on the economy.
Henderson has attracted projects like the Raiders team headquarters and a Google data center. Together, the city maintains those projects will be good for about $100 million in tax revenue over the next 2+ decades. Mayor March says the city is trying to grow in a more managed way.
We're really looking at how we can bring quality growth and working with our community and our businesses to ensure that we maintain the quality of life that our residents have come to appreciate and know.
March also said she's confident the city's new police chief, Letizia Watson, will maintain the city's reputation as one of the safest in the country.
Raising the minimum wage.
It's going to be an interesting fight that will definitely split some Democrats.
Watch what you wish for, because you may wind up getting it.
And our face-off panel tackles just how high the minimum wage may get in the upcoming legislative session.
And making housing more affordable. Some of the interesting bills aimed at giving people a place to live. That's next. Well, Governor Steve Sisolak has floated the idea of raising the minimum wage to $12 an hour over a 4-year period. So will that happen? And is $12 an hour the right number? We asked our face-off panel, KXNT radio host Alan Stock and Battleborn Progress Deputy Director Maria Teresa Lieberman.
No surprise, Governor Sisolak wants to see the minimum wage at $12. It would be a 4-year increase. Do you see the legislature passing that and putting that plan into happen? And is that enough? Is that where it should be?
I think you're definitely going to see the legislature pass something, but is it enough? I think he's going to face a lot of pressure from especially the folks that want to see it at 15 at least. I think at the end of the day, though, that and most legislators will probably agree on both sides that something does have to be done and increase it at some point this session, because the longer we wait, the more we'll have to increase it whenever it does get increased. So there will be some negotiations. I don't know if it'll be 12. For a lot of folks will want more than 12, or probably 15 at minimum, but it's going to be an interesting fight that will definitely split some Democrats, and we'll see where the governor and at the end of the day what the legislator lands on.
I think that's a good point. You're going to see the Democrats somewhat split on the issue because some leadership, I think, is in favor of 12 an hour. The more progressive wing of the party wants to see 15. Despite that split, will they be able to coalesce and get to 12 or get to that number?
You know, there's an old cliche about watch what you wish for, because you may wind up getting it. New York actually, as of January 1st, went from $13 to $15 an hour minimum wage, New York City. And the result was a New York City Hospitality Alliance survey was taken after that. 75% of full-service restaurants, 75%, are going to reduce employee hours in response to this mandated wage increase. 47% will eliminate jobs in 2019, nearly half. And 87% will increase menu prices this year. You know, when you start out at a low end of the spectrum to be able to make money and be able to get your foot in the door, it often becomes a significant moment in your life. There was one restaurateur in New York City who was interviewed who talked about the fact that she's going to eliminate busboys or bussing people from the table. She's going to have servers bus their own table. And one may say, well, so what? Well, you're eliminating a certain low-level pay position, and when you do that, you have to look at her restaurant in particular, because the general manager of her restaurant right now started out as a low-pay wage busboy and worked his way on up. Now he's a general manager of a restaurant.
Years ago, it was easier to move up the ladder, but now what a lot of people are finding is that they go into the low-paying job and it's hard to move up because people aren't leaving those good-paying jobs. So you have people that are just stuck at the bottom longer than before, and so that's why you're seeing this movement to increase the minimum wage, because the movement up is a lot more difficult now.
The minimum wage, though, never intended to raise a family on. You know, I've got 2 kids and I've got rent, and I've got, to pay for the kids' clothing for school and food and insurance and everything like that. It was never intended for that. That was not the intent. The intent was to get people an opportunity to get a foot in the door. And generally speaking, younger people more than older people, quite frankly. I had a minimum wage job when I was in high school. And again, I knew other people who did as well. During the school year, during the summertime, those jobs will be eliminated. And again, that's not just me saying this. These restaurants in New York, nearly half are going to be eliminating jobs.
Well, you can also watch Alan and Maria debate how long the government shutdown will last, criminal justice reform bills, and extending the modified business tax. That's all on LasVegasNow.com. Look for political news under the News tab. Patrick?
All right, Steve, this is Eye on Carson City, where we tell you what to expect when the legislature kicks back up now in just about a week. Affordable housing will be a key issue. The committee came up with 5 bill draft requests that, among other things, would allow cities to subsidize affordable housing projects without having to pay it back from the general fund. Another would try to fold affordable housing into the Medicaid option. Those bills, however, are not yet written. Clark County School District approved its list of requested legislation. Among the district's bill draft requests is a Handle with Care initiative that would address student trauma. Police will notify the school district through the Safe Voice system when they find a student at the scene of a traumatic event. That way the school district can check in on them. And something the legislature may have to take up as well is that north-south funding disparity. Brookings Mountain West Director Robert Lang pointed out the disparity in this year's Preview Las Vegas event.
The only reason you could have Reno bidding on Tesla is that way down, 400 miles down here, is a giant strip loaded with very productive businesses that have enormous tax capacity. And then you can forgive somebody and cushion their entry into our state as a result of that.
Las Vegas-based projects have only received about 22% of the incentives awarded to companies to relocate here, according to Brookings Research. The vast majority of incentives have gone up north. Incentivized or not, growth is projected to continue through 2019. So, Steve, this is something that you asked the governor about, that funding disparity, during our gubernatorial debate right on the Democratic side.
Yeah, absolutely. And he didn't suggest that the solution would be to take money from the north and give it back to the south. He wanted to actually just take more money and give it to the north, because there's some rural areas the tax base just isn't big enough to support the economy, so they have to rely on a subsidy for the south, and that's probably always going to be the case.
Right, it's such a great difference. Reno will never be Las Vegas, and the rurals will never be the size of Reno.
Right, exactly.
Well, education and small business. The Las Vegas Metro Chamber of Commerce tells us about the bills that have piqued their fancy.
Super Bowl 53. You're watching Politics Now.
Well, I guess we have about 120 days of bill wrangling and signing and all of that coming up. And, of course, politicians have been getting ready for that. We have been getting ready for that. And the Las Vegas Metro Chamber of Commerce also getting ready for the legislative session as well. Vice President of Government Affairs for the Chamber, Paul Moradkin, talked with me about what bills they're keeping an eye on. Among the items that were in the speech, we had just been talking, but some investments in higher ed, but to CSN CSN and then the Nevada State College down here as well. I think that's something that you guys have been tracking very closely for a while now.
It is. I think his announcements on the higher ed side on capital improvement projects is extremely important. Like you said, for the CSN, it's been a priority the last couple of years for them to build a new health sciences building. That's a joint venture between CSN and Nevada State College, and that's really important to the healthcare pipeline in Southern Nevada. The more accessibility we have for students to be able to enter those fields, the better we're off in healthcare in this industry in Southern Nevada and the state. So that's a great, and then the education announcement for the building for Nevada State College is also important when we talk about teacher workforce pipeline development. So the Chamber applauds the governor for supporting those two projects. We think they're absolutely going in the right direction, and we're really pleased about UNLV. In his proposal, will receive $14 million for operational for the UNLV School of Medicine, which has also been a long-standing priority for the Chamber of Commerce.
Small businesses got a big shout-out.
They did, which was great, and we applaud the governor for recognizing that.
How crucial is that? You know, we think of the larger businesses, we think of the Teslas that get lured, and Apple, and those big companies, but small businesses make up a huge chunk of our workforce here in Southern Nevada, and in Nevada overall.
No, absolutely. if you actually look at the Dieter numbers, there's about 1.4 million Nevadans in the state. About 1.21 million are private sector employees. And you look at that, a good chunk of that is our small business owners and their employees. And for us, that's under 50, and they are an important part of any economic recovery, stability, and job creation. And I think Governor Sisolak,
Gotta get used to that now.
You have to, yeah, absolutely. Governor Sisolak understands that, and so we appreciate his shout out to our small business members in this state.
He as a county commissioner and working with businesses, that is part of his background. He's a businessman as well. I would imagine there's some level of comfort going in that you have to be able to work with him through some of these issues as they come up.
Absolutely. I think, when he was at the county commission and the board of regents, and I had the pleasure of working with him at both levels when he was in those elected positions, I think you aptly see he's very pragmatic. He's a former business owner himself. He understands when we're talking about regulations, mandates. I mean, he understands what impact that has, just not on as an employer side, but on employees and how that could impact the workforce.
Well, the Chamber says they are tracking about 2/3 of the bills that will be potentially passing through the legislature this year.
Yeah, it's quite a bit, more than 600.
All right, and what to watch? North Las Vegas Mayor John Lee's State of the City speech is Tuesday over at Texas Station. That'll be kicking off at noon. Of course, we will have full coverage right here on Channel 8 and on Politics Now. Steve, we were just talking a few minutes ago in the show about how the north-south divide needs to be addressed, and Governor Sisolak wants to see some movement there, but didn't get the best reception up in Reno.
Yeah, he is a former regent, and now he's talking about One Nevada, but back then when he was a regent, he was talking about how it is not Nevada, it is the University of Nevada, UNR, and he insisted that it be called UNR. So when he was up at UNR very recently, he was booed by folks up there who were not too happy about his choice of nomenclature for the.
Some folks had a long memory on that one.
Yes, yeah, exactly. That memory extends, and they will probably not forget. Dina Titus once ran for governor and accidentally said, "I'm glad to be at UNLV" when she was at UNR.
Oh, hey,
that hurt her. Well, that's our show. Thanks very much for watching Politics Now.
All right, we will see you next week. Be sure to watch us right here every Saturday and tune in all the time online.